Wait, let me check my hair. Good.
You're looking really good.
Is it in the sink? Should have a nice shine on it. This morning.
There's a blanket across my legs here.
It's just
I know,
several
coats and
sweaters. No, it's perfect. That's why he's too warm and she's too cold. It's perfect.
Seeing a red icon in the bottom left, is that muted still?
Somebody else muted, I believe.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Jonathan. Now that's perfect.
Well, good evening, council. We do have a couple of public hearings this evening, so we'll start with those. I will call the May 11th, 2021 public hearing to order. First item on the agenda is the adoption of today's agenda. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette, any additions? Shouldn't be, it's a public hearing. All in favor? It's carried. I do have a public hearing statement to verbalize this evening. Today's public hearing, dated May 11th, 2021, held in the Village of Valemount Council Chambers at 735 Cranberry Lake Road in Valemount, BC. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to the terms of the Local Government Act, prior to consideration of two items. Number one, street vendor permit 0321, alternative location application. And two, the Village of Valemount Official Community Plan Bylaw number 843-2021. At a public hearing, any person present who believes that they are affected by a matter being considered shall be given an opportunity to be heard on the matter contained in the proposal. Members of the public speaking to the proposal should, at the appropriate time, commence your address to this council by stating your name and area of residence, at which time you may then give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposal. Anyone who deems their interests are affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this meeting. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views known. All who submit comments at this public hearing will restrict their remarks to matters contained in the proposal. And it is my responsibility as chairperson of this meeting to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. At the conclusion of a public hearing, council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representation made at the hearing. For item 4, proposed alternative location for street vendor permit number 0321 at 1170 Fifth Avenue, the Funky Goat Eatery. We do have a presentation by staff under 4.1 by Ms. Shepherd, our Deputy Corporate Officer.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Hear you just fine.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. The first item on tonight's public hearing agenda is the Funky Goat Eatery's application for a street vendor permit, requesting to operate at an alternative location, meaning a location not already approved in the street vendor bylaw. Street vendor permit 0321 proposes to allow the Funky Goat Eatery to operate for up to 3 years, 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. at 1170 Fifth Avenue between the Rocky Mountain Goat and Three Ranges Brewery. The property is legally described as Lot 2, District Block 9778, Caribou District Plan PGP 35390. Owner of the Funky Goat, Mr. David Grant, was previously given approval to operate at this location from 2017 to 2020 and wishes to continue the same in 2021. At the regular council meeting of April 13th, council gave initial approval for the proposed street vendor location. Since then, adjacent property owners have been notified of the proposal and affected residents have been invited to provide feedback via written submissions to the village office or at this evening's public hearing via the village's YouTube channel. As of noon today, there were no written submissions received from the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On this matter under 4.2, have we received written submissions?
I haven't received any. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any verbal presentations under 4.3? In the case of an electronic, from members of the public, in the case of an electronic meeting, comments submitted to YouTube since the commencement of the public hearing will be read aloud at this time.
No comments have been received.
Thank you. Do we have a presentation by the applicant under 4.4?
He is not present this evening.
Thank you. Therefore, he cannot respond to questions or comments raised by the public under 4.5. So do we have any questions by council under 4.6 for either the planning staff, the deputy corporate officer? On to item 5, the official community plan bylaw number 843-2021. Under 5.1, we do have a presentation by staff by Miss Eddy, our planner.
Evening, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shepherd.
You're welcome.
The Village of Valemount is, sorry. The Village of Valemount has undergone a major update and rewrite of our official community plan and is also finalizing the new zoning bylaw. MBH Urban Planning and Design Incorporated was hired to undertake this project starting in May 2020, and they will be presenting here shortly. The updating of these bylaws addresses some major concerns that have been identified within the Village of Valemount. The increasing unaffordability of housing, homeowner and development limitations due to inflexible and out-of-date zoning and OCP regulations, limited pedestrian and transportation connectivity, and the lack of industrial and employment lands for job creation and economic diversification. The Village of Valemount has also struggled with flat population growth, minimal development, commercial investments, and far-reaching infrastructure with a limited tax base, which increases property taxes per capita over time. This official community plan and the upcoming zoning bylaw are tackling these issues by increasing flexibility and permissions within the land use designations and zones. We have introduced mixed-use areas to promote infill and vibrancy in our commercial centers. The addition of employment lands and light industrial zones provide significant opportunities for live-work developments, economic diversity and sustainability, as well as the potential to increase property tax revenue and local job creation opportunities. A parking strategy has been developed to reduce congestion and increase access to core village center. And a new trail network is proposed to connect the beautiful natural areas surrounding this community, as well as increasing the connectivity, pedestrian safety, and tourism appeal within the village. It was identified that the village has a significant amount of vacant land that could be generating more revenue if developed. This has spurred further discussion of revitalization tax exemptions in commercial areas to promote development, as well as supporting residential infill, such as permitting accessory dwelling units and increasing the flexibility in zoning and home-based business regulations. Infill utilizes existing assets and resources while reducing hurdles to more affordable housing and housing types. It promotes more development opportunities and flexibility and encourages a more vibrant downtown core. Additionally, the creation of a master plan for the village's large vacant Ash Street parcel by the high school is a significant step forward for the village to take initiative in regards to development, employment, and housing opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Under 5.3, we'll now have written submissions or summary submissions received prior to the proceedings.
Yeah, we received one submission from John Grogan at 880 Hillside Drive. I will read that now. Preface. Research consistently shows that the process underpinning democratic consultation exercises is unrecognized for its potential to enhance democracy or undermine it. With democracy under increasing attack, establishing effective democratic consultation principles at the local level, which is where most people are interested in participating with political structures, is vital. The urgency and importance of this unrecognized need is only going to increase as more people become familiar with and willing to utilize tools of social media to express their discontent. Hosting public engagements and consultations that genuinely welcomes and supports citizens' meaningful input is easier said than done, but it can be done. We are fortunate here that we have citizens with suggestions, wisdom, lived experience, and the commitment to want part want to be part of the planning for a better future, who wish to be part of building a better future for the Village of Valemount. That is Teresa Healy, PhD, Adjunct Professor, School of Environmental Planning and Gender Studies at UNBC. But we have not realized this need and the opportunity it offers. In fact, on the contrary, I have observed a continual decline to opportunities for public discourse in the democratic process. For example, the legislated extension of terms of elected municipal office challenges to full public participation in meetings of mayor and council. The use of voting machines in municipal election in a village with a population of approximately 1,000, including children. I believe we could reverse that here. This would mean overall slowing down and reshaping our OCP process. Admittedly, this would not necessarily be at the convenience of the contractors, and there may be other considerations unimaginable to this observer. I am nearing the completion of my 70th orbit of the sun. I recognize that I am of the age where I have to be cautious of telling Grandpa Simpson stories, but I am also fully aware that as an elder, I have a responsibility and obligation of citizenship to speak my truth. I turn to the wisdom of the likes of Gordon Sinclair, who put the question, how much did that cost? And Dave Broad performance did not hold back in expressing his unique perspectives. I will not be around for the next OCP cycle rebirth and hope to survive this pandemic and its variants. I might be argued that we are in an existential crossroads of crisis, if not as a species, at least in our economic status quo. The globalization of the leisure class is presently in crisis, and none are assured in their confidences that the tourism economy will recover. The world economies are in flux. I refer you to the book After the Crash, The Emergence of the Rainbow Economy by Guy Dauncey. Mr. Dauncey explores a variety of system failures, and although a pandemic does not appear to be in the index, it is certainly a condition that could launch us into crisis that he describes in detail, and to some solutions that might be helpful to soften the potential for devastation. On page 1, paragraph 1, he states in part, there is not just one crisis, there are four: the world economy, of global debt, the global environment, and of community collapse. Written in 1988, it does not delineate a fifth crisis of dynamic pandemic. We are in a position to write that chapter now in how we adapt or not. I offer that we are not in a position to entertain the second option. As a child, I was a Boy Scout. The motto, be prepared, has served me well over the years. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst might be another way of putting it. The scientific method includes essential elements of the null hypothesis and peer review. I think those same principles might well apply to the social sciences generally, and in the instance of the official community plan process before us. This is my gift to my community. We can do better than the proverbial frog in the frying pan, unable to move despite the heat building. Reasons for slowing down and doing it better. 1, COVID-19 should have shut down the process until such time that the process methodologies were developed to mitigate a world otherwise on lockdown. COVID has impacted the community severely. Brain cloud, isolation, citizens struggling economically have no time for OCP while the house of cards falls in. We are all in the same storm. We were not in the same boat. Depression and retreat from the outside world, disconnect from family and community relationships. These circumstances are not the best in which to be undertaking work to build a positive future. Rather, an OCB process launched as a welcome back event when it's safe to go outside again would help rebuild relationships and hope. 2, necessity for broader vision. For example, tourism was offered in previous OCPs as a means to diversify the economy in light of challenges in the forestry sector. We need to continue to tap into the views of a cross-section of residents with ideas for diversifying our economy, not just the economic business sector. 3, problematic structures of consultations to date further marginalize community members and need to be redesigned to allow full cross-sector of interests and perspectives if they are to be expressed safely. I'm aware of the work of the School of Environmental Planning at UNBC, which works diligently to ensure students have experiential learning as part of their curricula. We have had 2 successful initiatives, including the founding of the Three Valley Community Development Cooperative. This is one example of an inexpensive support we could be calling on to improve our OCP process that would be most welcomed by the school and provide us with professional through apprentice support we could afford. I highly recommend we slow down our OCP and make it a community building endeavor rather than lip service exercise of strategically building the economic but no other sector of our community. Reflections and observations. The following reflections and observations are a compilation of notes largely made prior to the recent Zoom Facebook open house offered in lieu of a face-to-face event. My concerns revolve in my belief that momentum of a faulty process may have already set the direction and velocity of the outcome. My notes may ruffle some feathers, but they are offered in aggregate to prompt honest dialogue. It should be noted that there are some matters that have been left out which might be better addressed in camera. I reserve the right to make further comment should other related matters emerge. Notes. Each successive OCP, with its arguable shortcomings in effectively engaging the entire community, reverts to a more privileged subset, the well-heeled, as it were, to express their personal bias to further advantage. This becomes a convenient habit of process that enables an incremental focus in one direction. This process is being repeated in multiple municipalities across the province, some worse than others. These OCPs are mandated by law, but perhaps the law itself is not specific enough to ensure sacred trust to be heard in the public forum. Is there an accreditation process to measure results? The use of open houses where people drop in over the course of hours to mill around and look at the displays of the perimeter of the hall and chat with the proponents is no suitable substitute for a town hall meeting to hear and be heard, exploring the full complement of vision for the commons. A public hearing is at the other end of the process, too formal and to enable open discussion or debate. No opportunity to hear others' opinions, nor of being heard. This is a dangerous condition which further generates poverty and oppression of the human spirit. This lack of adequate process is a stunning example of patriarchal groupthink for the betterment of the few. The OCP, Official Community Plan, must not become in effect an OBP, Official Business Plan. Previously updated in 2006, public involvement in the Valemount OCP project is key to ensure chosen strategies, policies, and regulations reflect citizens' current vision for the community and address present-day concerns. I fear nothing could be further from the truth. This OCP exercise is a sham and a series of pretend public engagements going through the motions of social engagements. The data reported in the What We Heard report, Draft Directions, November-December 2020, might prove out my assertion. It appears that the process was skewed by an overrepresentation of business interests and an underrepresentation of social interests and values. There also appears to be a failure in respect to the rural values in favor of more urban bias created in a cookie-cutter template offered by the consultants. The public consultative process was further complicated by the trappings of the global pandemic of COVID-19, creating a vacuum of citizen engagement with meaningful discussions and debates, enabling freedoms of associations with like-minded communities of interest in anything other than business development. The OCP in this instance might be better called an OBP, Official Business Plan. There was, in the early days of the process, a token hint of public engagement. I personally jumped through the offered hoops, not unlike a trained circus fair. I filled in the workbook offered by email address to keep informed and attended the COVID compliant public processes. I imagine my disappointment in never receiving a follow-up phone call to discuss my observations, interests, and concerns. This is not my first rodeo. I attended village council meetings consistently for 15 years. I have lived in this community for more than 40 years. I contributed to the social order associated with community development with demonstrated leadership roles in startup activities such as BCTV, the Internet Society, the Canoe Valley Community Association, the Three Valley Community Development Cooperative, the Youth Society, etc. From my perspective, my contribution to this OCP process is not reflected. Further, I contend that a subset of business interests is overrepresented in the results of this exercise. This is self-serving and sometimes contrary to the collective will of the community. I have to question the very integrity of the public survey. What measures were taken to ensure that the online survey was not completed repeatedly using different unique devices? This behavior was observed and encouraged in voting for best snowmobile community and other social media competitions. For example, on page 4 of the most recent document, What We Heard Report Draft Directions, November to December 2020, Core Village Center, CVC, consider tax rebate incentives to draw development downtown area, reduce taxes for the first few years while development is being established. The downstream effect is that everyone else will see tax increase and or a reduction of services to cover their shortfalls. This is just one telling instance to suggest that what we heard was not representative of all interests. The result without extraordinary measures will be a more urban gentrification, creating a less affordable community for many residents. This will cause displacement of some of our neighbors and friends. The COVID-19 pandemic has created extraordinary conditions of social isolation that might further arguably have skewed the data collected by the contractors and reflected more favorably to the ultimate decision makers. I think it can be demonstrated that there has been a cookie cutter approach to the process of public engagements that further bias the findings to the business core to the detriment of interests of residential, social infrastructure, and amenities. Example, dental care, community center, etc. I participated in 3 public gatherings called by the contractors, all centered around the business core. I suggest that this approach was further disincentive for marginalized community members from representing their best interests in creating a vision for themselves and their families. The first exercise was a meeting of a small group of individuals, around 10 to 15. We walked together for a block and a half before stopping briefly, then calling it a day. Vehicular traffic noise created an unwelcome distraction and interruption for any meaningful dialogue. Another exercise was held in the park. There was little, if any, opportunity to hear or be heard from other community members. This is another condition that impedes development of social cohesion, expression, and association. The final venue I heard was a vacant lot between the newspaper office and the craft brewery. It was at best marginally useful. Traffic noise was a distinct distraction, prompting the principal facilitator at one point to blurt out something to a particularly loud pickup truck. The crowd also consisted of random patrons of the outside tasting room of the brewery. There were post-it notes available for those who wished to comment on the storyboards that were displayed with the artist's rendition of the vision of the contractors offered. Social distancing was difficult at best, and I had no confidence that the post-it notes would make it back to the office due in part to wind. A search of my email inbox confirmed my concerns that emails from the Valemount OCP were sparse. To their credit, there was to be an open house on November 23rd. That was canceled the morning of due to COVID-19. I received nothing further directly from the Valemount OCP until January 8th, 2021 with the subject line, "Thank you for participating in our survey." In the past, I have heard the axiom, decisions are made by those who show up. My concern is reflected in the reciprocal. Decisions are made by those who are invited. Were invited includes welcomed. My questions include, how many meetings were held in this process and who attended? I did not appear to have been invited to any of said meetings, nor did I receive any minutes. I asked myself, who was invited? I ask these questions in part because my experiences in the past where there have been top-heavy processes and where those with a vision other than the prevailing one are marginalized by design. The virtual presentation of the draft official community plan and zoning bylaw scheduled on Monday, March 8th was a failure beyond description. Whoever administered the Zoom meeting might have managed for those who allegedly Zoom bombed the meeting, causing the meeting to be shut down before it started. All microphones can be muted until there is a reason for other than presenters to speak. Likewise, cameras can be disabled until needed if necessary. The notification of a rescheduled virtual open house was received on Friday, March 12th at 10:09 a.m. This notice does not meet minimum standards for notice. I received it because I am on the mailing list. The notice stated in part, highlighted below. Please email us ocp@valemount.ca or reply to this email prior to Sunday, March 14th to pre-register. A Zoom link and password will be emailed out to subscribers on Monday. I have to put the question of proper notice and access to reasonable access. Pre-register prior to Sunday, March 14th amounts to by Saturday, March 13th. How is this reasonable notice? At 11:55 a.m. on Monday, March 15th, I received login instructions for the 5:30 p.m. Zoom event. I am thinking that under the circumstances described, I will not log in while others in my community are excluded. I also have concerns that my presence at this late date will be seen as a tactic endorsement of this process. The exclusive use of internet technologies creates a digital divide of and for civic engagement. And by extension, it can be argued that this exclusionary for a subset of the community to equal access of democratic participation. Likewise, any notification offered on the Voyant Alert cell phone app is dependent on the financial and technological commitments and abilities. I, for one, do not have a cell phone. It might be interesting to learn what percentage of residents of Valemount have installed the Voyant Alert app. This community is unique in that it has publicly funded community access television. When I addressed the option to broadcast live to VCTV, I was advised that VCTV said they could not do that. This is another frustration to public engagement. VCTV was able to live broadcast 20 years ago, and it did. It could do so today if there was a political will. I monitored the VCTV bulletin board from 2:15 until 2:45 p.m. on Monday, March 15th, and there was no notice about the OCP public meeting this evening. On that venue, this is inexcusable. If COVID taught us one thing, it's that we need to pivot our status quo group think mentality. Ego, ergo, I go is no way to behave in the public sphere. In the absence of information, false narratives become reality. There does not appear to be a plan B or plan C, COVID. The narrative of diversifying our economy in the previous crisis of the collapsed forest industry has pivoted into a tourism mono-economy that is not being adequately addressed by this overpriced and underrepresented official community plan. COVID variants or other unique pandemics could come along tomorrow. What relief from disaster does this plan offer? Diversity of the economy is similar to diversity of opinion in this instance. I do not see either in this plan. Does this plan address or even acknowledge the reality of dangerous commodity unit trains at track speed with 2 uncontrolled crossings? Does this plan address policing costs? Does this plan or the omnibus bylaws rewrite address keeping backyard hens, industrial tax base, cost-benefit analysis, food security, mass migration of urban dwellers fleeing natural or man-made devastation? In conclusion, I wish to acknowledge that I may be in error on some point or another, but my expressions of interest in hearing all voices in their choir include the drunk in the back row and the otherwise disenfranchised and otherwise marginalized persons, including children and families. These observations are offered in the spirit of goodwill to the democratic process. Anything less is in danger of becoming an official cabal plan. I think the provincial taxpayer and the government that administers the purse string should expect much, much better. And he added an addendum. It is with regret that I neglected to humbly acknowledge that I am a settler who gracefully lives and works and plays on the traditional unceded territory of the Simpcw and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. In this time of COVID pandemic, it may be fitting to pause in reflection of past and continuing grievous harms suffered by others by our illusions of privilege and entitlement. An acknowledgement of previous historic diseases of the body and spirit introduced post-contact is essential to truth and reconciliation and ultimately to healing of all parties. I contend that it is not sufficient to utter the words of acknowledgement without incorporating it deeply as an integral and overreaching element of who we are and who we hope to be. We find ourselves in a time of rising bigotry, hatred expressed and perpetuated systemically by individuals against Indigenous people, people of Asian heritage, and other people of color, LGBTQ2, and due to conditions of economic status. I offer that there is an opportunity for community development beyond the otherwise legislated obligations of the process. There's presently a set of circumstances that might frame an official community plan as a triple bottom line model, accounting for social, environmental, and economic values. We need to ask ourselves, what is missing in this draft plan and in this process beyond meaningful engagement? Measure environmental impacts in terms of the principle of 7 generations, appreciation of the value of arts, values, inventory, and celebration of cultural diversity, any SWOT analysis, the potentials of cooperatives and other economic alternatives. This plan has an opportunity to acknowledge the historic and continuing contributions made by Métis people of this municipality and area. Beyond recognition and keeping in mind the axiom of nothing about us without us, there may be opportunities to explore the community, economic development, and cultural potentials of the Métis Historic and Cultural Center of National Significance. We are geographically well positioned as the service center of Tijan Cache Historic Landmark. Salmon enhancement opportunities were also overlooked. What else might have been overlooked by too small a sampling of groupthink? Page 2 is a copy of preliminary notes from the OCP 2021 shared with organizers. And his notes include, not everything can be measured has value. Not everything that has value can be measured. I see a growth bias. I see an urban bias. Gentrification displaces my neighbors. Mountain culture is lip service, rinse and repeat. I love living in a village. Valley of broken dreams. Village is an asset. No more fast food, MIC economy. What effort has been made to engage low-income residents? COVID clusters. This is no time for an official community plan. Where is the town hall meeting? I want an inclusive community debate. We do not have a community center or neighborhood house. No dentist. We had one until recently. We do not need another realtor's dream OCP. Where are the neighbors? Did you consult with minimum wage employees? Too many bylaws in our village and chickens. That is all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Eddy. Are there any, under 5.3, are there any verbal presentations from the public? So in the case of an electronic meeting, this one, comments submitted to YouTube since the commencement of the public hearing?
No, there's
Double
not.
check.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you. We have a presentation under 5.4 by the MVH Urban Planning for this Village of Valemount official community plan.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. We're really delighted to be here. It's a very important date. My name is Michael Von Hausen. I'm president of MVH Urban Planning and Design. I'm joined by Jonathan Schmidt, Amy Clark, and Fraser Blythe, who are here to support, and Jonathan will provide a brief presentation following my introduction. First, my team would like to extend a sincere thank you to all those who helped us along the path of developing the official community plan. As we just heard, it takes a community to build a village. First, great appreciation for the collaboration efforts of staff from the village, including Megan Vincente, Silvio Giselem Berte, and Wayne Robinson, as well as Krista Eddy. Thank you for your presentation and thank you for your support through the process. Thank you to Council for your active participation and support, led by Mayor Owen Torgenson. Thank you very much. Councilors Holly Blanchette, Sherry G, Donnie McLean, and Pete Pearson. You were there all the way along the process in these difficult times. Finally, thanks to the support committee who helped guide the process and the community for participating in these very challenging times, as we just heard. The OCP project began in the spring of 2020 and has been one of the village's most extensive engagement processes despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. The OCP provides Valemount a strong vision for a promising future with focus on a vibrant center village and enhancement of the village's existing character, keeping the scale and supporting the community meeting place. The village's future looks bright. The hard work begins now with council staff and the community helping shape that future. I would like to now call on Jonathan Schmidt of our team to provide a short summary of the OCP and its principal directions from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And just wondering who has the presentation. I can present from my screen, or if there is an administrator on, then I will leave it to them. I guess I can present my screen if that.
Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. As Michael said, it's been a real privilege to be part of this official community plan process. And it was a great privilege to work with Megan throughout the process. And she was a great asset and an expert planner. And so we're sad to hear that she moved on from her job, but very excited to work with Krista as we also finish up the zoning bylaw. Krista brings a lot of understanding of the village, knowledge, and expertise. And so we're happy that you found someone in-house that can bring that to the official community plan implementation as it moves ahead. So just first like to acknowledge the unceded territory of the Sim First Nation. So as I've said before in presentations, the OCP is very important. There's a lot of plans within each municipality and especially within the village. Here's a list of them. And so the OCP, where should it sit? Well, it should sit at the top, and it is very important. It is the preeminent plan within the village. And so it guides, budget, strategic planning, it guides the zoning bylaw, asset management, village policies. It's really the key guiding document. And it's the vision. And so I always say the OCP should be put in its proper place. And so that's at the top, underneath, council's direction. And if you're looking for a guidebook in terms of what to do as council, then the OCP is that guidebook and that vision. So where have we come from? As mentioned, the process began in May 2020, June 2020. And so we are here now at the end in approximately 11 months later, which as Michael knows from his years in the planning world, it's actually a fairly compressed process. And we've done a lot in that time. Once again, what does it mean to you? It is the key vision document. And as mentioned by previous speakers, it was last updated in 2006. So the village is facing what you could summarize as 4 key challenges. As mentioned by Krista's words there, flat population growth means that as infrastructure ages, each person or each taxpayer pays more. So if you don't grow, then the infrastructure ages, and those that are, still in the village need to pay for that aging infrastructure. And how is it going to be paid for? Well, one opportunity is growth, but growth within reason and growth appropriately scaled and sized. And so that was a long discussion within the project in the engagement. Second, as mentioned, there's plenty of vacant land, lots of speculative land holdings. Housing affordability was heard as a key topic throughout the project, a key challenge for the village. And this seasonal tourism economy, the ups and downs of it, how does the village weather that? How do you create a resilient village that can withstand that seasonal economy? So where challenge exists, so does opportunity. So 4 opportunities, which are probably well known to many of you now, but guide, the OCP and the village as as it moves forward. So the village is attractive to creative entrepreneurs, mountain adventures, as you well know. Unaffordable housing in the big centers, the Kelownas, the Vancouvers, is pushing people out of those areas. And Valemount is a very favorable place for those people moving out of those situations. Remote work opportunities are growing, and the sharing economy, you know, things like Airbnb and other sharing economy opportunities provide some economic opportunities perhaps within the village. So in terms of engagement, this is a brief summary. We can go into it more if there are questions, but many of you were part of these. But for the public record, there were extensive workshops in July and September. There were these community circles kits, which was about a 10-page brochure with questions and information that went to, I believe, approximately 700 residents. It was handed out to approximately 700 residents within the village. And so while I believe there was maybe 80 to 100 respondents, you can think that most people in the village either browsed one or it was sitting on their coffee table or their kitchen table at one point in time, and that educational piece was really embedded within the process. So key themes that were heard: maintaining the village feel was a really key theme, keeping the quality of life in that village charm. And so the OCP was really, in the policies that were drafted, really guided by that. And you'll see that if you look through it. Affordability, seniors housing, connectivity and trails was key. And this idea of providing flexibility with mixed uses and flexibility with zoning, which we're working on with the draft zoning bylaw. And a host of other comments that we've listed, just some of them here, but there is more extensive reporting within those what we heard reports. So the OCP is summarized with two key goals. One is enhance the village for residents. We want to make sure that in this idea of looking to the future, that we look to the current community first. And that was a theme throughout. A lot of OCPs and a lot of community planning says, how do we attract that next group of people? Well, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. We want to make sure that enhance the village for residents. And then the second goal is that attraction piece, to maintain that vibrancy within the village. And people are knocking on the doors of Valemount. And so how do you accommodate them in an appropriate way that doesn't lead to those gentrification negatives that were mentioned? I think there's a lot of opportunity to make that a positive. If you bring people into the community, it doesn't have to be a negative. It can be a real positive if done right, and that strong sense of community maintained. So we developed 14 key priorities for action, and I won't go into them all as they are listed within the plan. And they highlight a few of the things I already mentioned, which is infilling those vacant lands. Those vacant lands within the village, which represent a significant geographic land base within the village, represent an opportunity to grow without having to grow out, and also without having to grow such that it displaces anyone. The land is vacant, and so having buildings on that vacant land can only bring benefit to the village if done at the appropriate scale and size. A few other things is this mountains to marsh trail network, which I'll go into a bit. So it's trails, mixed uses, fiber optic internet, and trying to address that interface with the highway and perhaps add some safety over time there. So what are the ingredients to a successful Valemount? We've identified some of the goals and the priorities. And so we identified 5 key ingredients for success, which this was kind of our report card for each OCP land use designation. And so you'll see within the OCP, each land use designation is evaluated on how they respond to this. And as a collective whole, we believe the OCP creates a complete community for Valemount. So we have stores, housing diversity to meet the needs of residents today and the future. Fun places, who doesn't want places to play? Jobs, it's an essential thing. We noticed in our evaluation of the village a lack of employment areas. There are tourism areas, but there isn't kind of traditional employment or light industrial live work opportunities. And so that's been added. And then sustainable tax revenue. So people want, sustainable taxes that don't go up too high, but also pay for the needs and then perhaps the wants too. So the OCP land use map, the designations are here. They're within your package, so I won't go into it too much, but key is that village center along 5th Ave, and then 3 residential areas with unique character. So we want to really maintain that residential character within the historic residential area, and then unique characters in residential neighborhoods 2 and 3. A mixed use area in what's labeled here as a rail town, but it's the Main Street area. And then identifying in the blue some employment land. So some are vacant, some could be more traditional and industrial. Some could be that live work opportunity, which is more innovative and more creator based, but adds that economic element to the village that isn't presently very overt. So I'll just go over five key topics, and I'm probably not giving them enough time here, but that's where the questions are available. And if anyone wants, they can dig into the OCP, of course. So accessory dwelling units, the policies within the draft OCP allow these opportunities for accessory dwelling units, laneway homes, basement suites, that kind of thing, all kind of grouped under this umbrella term of accessory dwelling units. Short-term vacation rentals, there was identified as focus that those should be within the residential neighborhood 2 and the residential neighborhood 3. So that's where the OCP went on that. Parks and trails, so this big idea, as mentioned, this Mountains to Marsh trail system to try to really embed within this village this love for trails and this love for getting on your bike, this love for walking, and to really connect the village through a trail network. And so one of the key things about that connecting piece is it was mentioned, well, we don't just want to connect the marsh to the mountains, although it sounds clever. We want to make sure people are connected to the downtown, to Fifth Ave. And so we believe that Dogwood is a perfect opportunity to do both of those things. It could be part of this grand trail network, this Mountains to Marsh, but also it connects the south to the downtown, which is a lacking connection at this time. So Michael drew up this beautiful sketch, which shows the opportunity to really enliven Dogwood with a multi-use pathway. So you have that biking and walking all mixed in with some landscaping to really connect the south to downtown and thereby create that key connection, within the village for active modes. Downtown and mixed uses, we mentioned this also a bit, but it was really came from a lot of discussions and commentary with citizens as well as staff. Staff had been getting a lot of questions from people wanting to utilize their property as both living and working, but it was felt that within the downtown, at least the streetscape should be a commercial feel, but if you wanted to have a residence, it could be above or behind, and that's where the draft policy went. And there's a lot of benefits, as we did some analysis, to bringing that mixed use environment into your downtown. And you already have it, it's just enhancing it a bit more. So as shown here, the mixed uses are allowed within this red band within the land use designations in the OCP, which include the core village center as a land use, and then the village center mixed use, which buffers it on either side. Sorry, the colors aren't as as coming through there. So I believe opportunity awaits for the village. This is an exciting new vision in your OCP, and we're happy to be a part of it and happy to field any questions that you may have. So thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schmidt. And thank you to your team as well. Did you have any sort of response under 5.5 to the questions or comments from the public? Michael, do you have any response? I've got a few notes, but I'll pass it off to you as the senior on this team.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Mayor Torgensen. I was taken by the commentary. As you know, I teach at, I've taught at Simon Fraser University. I'm an adjunct professor there, and I'm also an adjunct professor at Vancouver Island University. I think the most important point here is we made every effort within this changing pandemic environment to reach out. We tried to adjust with the workbook, the Circles workbook. We know by that absorption of 700 of these workbooks that the word did get out. We had 100 responses. I'm very careful in my experience to read through, and Amy Clark is our engagement expert on the team. We deliberated many times about how we could reach out, how could we keep safe distances, how do we adjust in these challenging times. But we carefully measured the responses of the community. I appreciate the long letter and the thought that was put into that and the respectfulness of it. We constantly strive to be inclusive, to be respectful, and to be, I try to condition my team all the time to say, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth to at least listen twice as much as we speak. So those are, we're always humbled by feedback because we can do our best, but best sometimes for some people in these trying times is almost an impossible situation. So we appreciate the thoughtfulness in the submission, and it's certainly certainly something we acknowledge, but at the same time, we made every effort in our deliberations, especially with the support group, to try to reach out, to try to listen, to say, have we got these issues right? Have we articulated them right? And now with the new OCP, the way it's structured, most importantly for council and staff to lead the way to shape that future. So again, we as a team always acknowledge and appreciate submissions, and but the structure of this OCP and how it was scribed was to actually provide an opportunity for the community and staff and council to now shape that future. So the game isn't over. The game is just starting in terms of shaping your promising future.
Thanks very much, Michael. 5.6, council, any questions for the presenters this evening? Well, Michael, thank you very much to your team. I've thoroughly, I can probably speak on behalf of council, and I will. We thoroughly enjoyed having you along for the ride throughout the last 11 months as we consider the official community plan later this evening.
Yes. Thank you very much on behalf of my team. It was a true pleasure. I now have a soft spot in my heart for Valemount, and I will always be coming back again and again, and my team has the same feeling. Thank you.
Be good to have you. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much.
I will now adjourn the public hearing. Excuse me. And on to the regular meeting of council being Tuesday, May 11th, 2021. First item on the agenda is to call it to order. And following that, 2.1, adoption of this evening's agenda. Councillor McLean, Councillor G, any additions? Hearing none, all in favor? It's carried. Item 3.1, adoption of the minutes of the previous regular meeting being April 27th, 2021. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G, any errors or omissions arising? Hearing none, all in favor? It's carried. We do have a bit of unfinished business under 5.1 for the Columbia Basin Trust Community Initiatives and Affected Area Program, funding recommendation for senior housing. Councillor Pearson.
I will recuse myself for this one as I'm an executive on the board.
Thank you very much. Couple of recommendations here. Number one, that resolution number 80821 be rescinded. 108, 108, did I say that, or 108?
You said 808.
Oh,
Sorry.
808. Good. 10821 be rescinded. Councillor G, Councillor McLean, any discussion on rescindment? All in favor? It's carried. The second recommendation here, that the CBT, CIP, AAP Adjudication Committee's recommendation that the Valemount Senior Citizens Housing Society receive $86,775 for their project, Valemount Cares Phase 2, be approved. Councillor G, Councillor Blanchette, any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. For your info, Councillor, both of those were carried.
Okay, thank you.
We have some correspondence for action under 6.1 from the Valemount Secondary School regarding the 2021 graduate banners, and the recommendation here that staff be directed to work with the Valemount Secondary School to display the 2021 Valemount Secondary School graduate banners on Fifth Avenue. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette, any discussion? Very similar to last year. All in favor? It's carried. Pretty extensive reading file before us this evening. Anything council wishes to float? Councillor Pearson?
Let me find it here. Item number 4, the response from the government on the 988 emergency hotline, suicide hotline. I'm happy to see that they responded. It's nice to see the acknowledgement. But in reading through, I find it somewhat disheartening that the CRTC is has first right to refusal on this project through their auspices. I have real issue with the fact that CRTC has the option to deny it before it even gets to the table. So.
Do you have any measured response? Or would you like to see a measured response?
I would entertain that we respond to that effect.
Seconder? Councillor Blanchette? Discussion on the motion? All in favor? It's carried. Was there anything further, Councillor Pearson, from the reading file?
No, that was all for me. Thanks.
Thank you very much for raising that. Anything further, council? On to administrative reports. Under 8.1, we do have a building inspection report to be received for January to April 2021. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion. Sure, the numbers will go up as construction season is upon us. All in favor of receipt? It's carried. 8.2, we do have a recommendation to sole source supervisory control and data acquisition upgrades. The recommendation here that staff be approved to sole source the SCADA upgrades to ICI Electrical Engineering Limited in the amount of $17,770. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette, discussion. Councillor Blanchette?
Just want to remind everyone that we sole source only when we have no, when there's a specialist that's involved, and that's this case. We need a specialist to deal with this equipment, so that's why we're sole sourcing.
A terrific traffic record at that. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.3, municipal seal coating request for tenure. A couple of recommendations here. That council direct staff to negotiate a contract with Northwest Seal Coating Company in the amount of $174,240 plus taxes for the purposes of seal coating Main Street. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion. All in favor? It's carried. And 2, that staff be authorized to negotiate a contract with Northwest Seal Coating Company in the amount of $204,780 for the plus taxes for the purpose of the optional items identified in the reports and contingencies if required for seal coating Main Street. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion. When is a site visit-ish to identify the contingencies if necessary?
I don't know. I'd have to defer that to the Director of Finance.
A site visit would be determined once the contract was approved.
Very good, thank you.
To discuss or just.
Is that satisfactory to council? Any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.4, we do have a statutory requirement before us, and that is the appointment of the subdivision approving officer. The recommendation here that Chief Administrative Officer, CAO, Wayne Robinson be appointed as the statutory approving officer, SAO, for minor subdivisions effective May 12, 2021. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor McLean, any discussion?
Doesn't have enough to do.
No. One more. Mr. Robinson, how long do you think you'll be needing to hold that mantle?
I would say a minimum of a year.
Minimum? Yeah. Thank you. Any further discussion, questions for the administrator? All in favor? It's carried. 8.5, we have a proposed development permit for mixed use building DP 2101 with a variance for 1451 Fifth Avenue. Recommendation here. Yes,
I would like to recuse myself as I'm chair of RVCSS.
very good.
And as an employee as well. I
Thank
also
you.
need to.
Recommendation here that council gives initial approval to development permit 2101 at the property legally described as Lot A, District Lot 7354 Plan PGP 32327 for the development of a mixed-use building with a variance to permit the following. Number 1, increase the building height to 12.8 meters. And 2, decrease the minimum parking requirements to 19 spaces. What's council's wish? Councillor Pearson? Councillor McLean? Discussion? Councillor Pearson?
in reading it, I agree with the variances. I have concerns with the parking plan, as that parking will be basically on village easement at on the Fifth Avenue side. But in reading this, it seems like it'll be a workable solution, so.
Did you have an opportunity? I had an opportunity to have some discussion with administration over. I too had those concerns, particularly the snow removal area, snow dump area, the drainage on the east side being downslope from the Valemount House Center, and some of the parking requirements in the south portion of the property. But reading more into it, I'm more and more satisfied. Any reflections? Any further discussion? Mr. Administrator.
Just for council's knowledge, we can bring this up to the proponent and let them know that these were concerns that were raised, and we'll make sure that they look at this closely.
This is just initial approval.
Yes.
Yeah. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? It's carried. For your shared info, initial approval has been granted.
Thank you.
8.6 street vendor permit 0321 at 1170 Fifth Avenue. There is a recommendation that staff, that final approval be given for the Funky Goat Eatery to continue operations at its current location of 1170 Fifth Avenue, legally described as Lot 2 DL 9778, Caribou District Plan, PGP 35390, for up to 3 years. Councillor G, Councillor Blanchette, any discussion? I sure missed him in 2020.
Needs money in there.
He's always respectful of that area and stuff.
Yes.
Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Bylaws and policies, number 9.1, item 9.1, 5-year financial plan bylaw, number 841, 2021. Recommendation here that the 5-year financial plan bylaw, number 841, 2021 be adopted as presented. Councillor McLean, Councillor Pearson, any discussion on final approval? Final adoption. Councillor Blanchette.
Just thank you to Lori McNair, Director of Finance. Fabulous, fabulous job.
Great work as always.
Yeah.
Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 9.2, Village of Valemount Official Community Plan Bylaw, number 843, 2021. Recommendation here that the Village of Valemount Official Community Plan Bylaw, number 843, 2021 be given third and fourth readings. Councillor G, Councillor Blanchette, discussion? Councillor Blanchette.
Thank you to everybody involved. Community is, of course, as well. It's a big process. It's finally done. And I think it represents what we need and want in our growth forward. Really great job.
Awesome, yeah. Further discussion? And just hats off to all of our volunteers at on our support committee. Councillor McLean, thank you very much for taking a seat as council there. Thank you. Any further discussion? It carries. 9.3, Village of Valemount Street Vendor Bylaw, number 713, 2014, Amendment Bylaw, number 844, 2021, be given first, second, and third reading. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, Discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 9.4 Village of Valemount Tax Rate Bylaw Number 845, 2021 be adopted as presented. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, any discussion, final adoption? All in favor? Carries. Are there any notices of motion this evening? Council reports. Councillor Blanchette.
On the 29th, we had a sign meeting. May 3rd, I actually was the first one. I did an inpatient record, health record, our design lab interview. I did the first one just to sort of iron out any bugs that we had with that process. Everybody has been really great. We've got our FAQ sheet out and circulating to try and find some more people to pull together and get a whole synopsis of the complete village. On the 5th and 6th, we had our NCLG conference, which was really quite interesting because, of course, again, it was over Zoom. We got through all of the resolutions, which was fantastic. They brought in some really great speakers, some good workshops. One of the biggest workshops that we had that was caused a lot of activity was the addressing affordable housing and homelessness. And so they couldn't get to all the questions. Everybody had still a lot of stuff they wanted to discuss. So NCLGA members said that they would try and pull together a webinar with BC Housing. So that was greatly appreciated. So we'll be able to do that. The 10th, myself, Councillor Pearson, Silvio Ghislombardi, our EDO, and our CAO, Wayne Robinson, we all got in the car and drove around and looked at signs, pretended we were from, somewhere else. And we drove around the whole area and looked at what signs we need. So that's moving along quite well. And on the 10th, I also had a child and youth mental health meeting. That's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Signage. Funny. Councillor McLean.
My report is a little longer as I was away last meeting, so mine goes all the way back to a Valemount Entertainment Society meeting on April the 20th. It was an exciting meeting. I'm sure most of you have heard by now. We have acquired 5 new channels and they were made available on April the 30th. The channels are 9.101, the Food Network, 9.102 PBS, 9.103 BBC News, KTLA 5, and 99.105 APTN. This brings the number of channels available through your local community rebroadcasters to 16, including our local channel 7. So instructions on how to access these new channels are available on the Valemount Community Television Facebook page. Am I correct? On April the 21st, I attended a Columbia Basin Regional Advisory Committee online webinar showing climate change projections for the Columbia Basin. This was interesting but concerning for the future. On April 26th, I attended the council tour of the new community forest industrial yard and the new mill. What the Valemount Community Forest Board and staff have accomplished is impressive and is a tremendous asset to this community. Good work and congratulations. On May 6th and 7th, I too attended some online sessions of the North Central Government Association's online annual general meeting and convention. Of particular interest for the parts that I was able to tune in for was a session on improving access to healthcare services in the North Central Local Government Association communities and the challenge that this presents. On May 10th, I attended the opening ceremonies of the online Bringing the Salmon Home Festival. This festival continues through May 16th, 2021. It's free online. It's an initiative of the Columbia Basin Trust to promote and celebrate the initiative to reintroduce salmon into the rivers of the Columbia Basin. The Indigenous nations of the Columbia Basin, the Government of Canada, and the Government of British Columbia have come together to make this a reality. The festival continues for a whole week. If you are interested in attending this free online event, it can be found at columbiariversalmon.ca. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Councillor Pearson?
Also on April 29th, along with Councillor Blanchette, CAO Robinson, and EDO Silvio Gislamberti had a signage committee meeting, just discussing our direction going forward as far as signage in the community to guide traffic and get people moving in the community. May 4th at a tourism meeting. The 5th and 6th, I as well attended the NCLGA meetings through a bit of a new platform. I think it worked well. And there was some really good presentations on that. It was a good forum. And again, on the 10th, guided in the capable driving skills of Councillor Blanchette, we did the signage tour around town and chose some locations, and we all survived.
Pleased to hear that. Councillor G?
My report is quite short. I've been very busy, but I have nothing council related to report.
Very good. I'm about to mirror your report.
Oh,
I attended the NCLGA virtual convention, and with Councillor Pearson, really enjoyed the WOVA chat function. It was an opportunity to really reconnect with some of our colleagues throughout the North, and without that, you know, it wasn't just one or two virtual lounges, it was topic specific, so you could dive into a room and hash things out with some pretty cool ideas out there. May 6th, I had a Northern Region call with Ministers Osborne and Bear on, you guessed it, connectivity in northern BC. Some of they highlighted some of the successes, and of course, our colleagues across the North have identified the many challenges that still remain. Today, a couple of things. Had a discussion with the administrator around public hearings and the council agenda for this evening. Had a briefing with Valemount Emergency Services, and much to everyone's chagrin, the BC state of provincial emergency has been extended today to May 25th. But excitingly tuned into the provincial announcement for the amendments to the Employment Standards Act. Workers, if exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms, may take 3 days paid sick leave to avoid the dilemma between a paycheck and the health and well-being of their coworkers. The employer, in turn, is reimbursed through WorkSafe BC. So really good to hear that that made some traction and will be worked into legislation. Motion to receive. Questions, comments? Oh, Councillor Pearson, sorry.
Actually, just a quick comment on Councillor McLean's report on the returning of the salmon. There was a nice little item on CKPG News tonight about Spruce Capital Fisheries, and they have become like the most high-tech fish raising plant in BC for sure. And they are raising Swift Creek salmon. So it was a nice little shout out for them. So.
Awesome to hear. Further discussion, comments? All in favor? Who? Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette. Discussion. All in favor of receipt? Carried. Are there any public comments as received considered by council as part of the approved agenda?
There are no public comments.
We will not be proceeding to in-camera this evening, so I'll call for adjournment. Councillor Pearson. Thank you, council.